Some discoveries are exciting: a forgotten room, an old photograph, a mysterious recording. But sometimes, the thing you discover was hidden for a reason, and the moment you find it, someone, or something, knows you found it. Tonight, you're going to hear 3 fictional stories about ordinary people who uncovered extraordinary secrets. The first begins with a house that had one room too many. The second begins with a recording that predicted things before they happened. And the third begins with a photograph that contains someone who shouldn't have been there. These stories are fictional, but each one is built around a simple question. What would you do if you discovered something that was never meant to be found? When Daniel bought the house, everyone in the neighborhood told him the same thing. Don't ask why it's so cheap. The house had been empty for almost 11 years. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't modern, but it was enormous, surrounded by trees, and the price was almost impossible to believe. Daniel assumed there had to be some ordinary explanation. Maybe the previous owner had died. Maybe the property had legal problems. Maybe nobody wanted to spend money renovating it. He didn't care. He had spent months searching for a place he could afford, so he bought it. The first 2 weeks were completely normal. He replaced broken windows, removed old wallpaper, painted the bedrooms, and slowly started turning the abandoned house into his home. Then, one afternoon, while replacing the wooden floor in the dining room, his hammer struck something underneath. Clang! Daniel stopped. He hit the floor again. Clang! It wasn't wood. It sounded like metal. He removed several boards. Underneath was a thick metal plate. There was no handle, no lock, just a rectangular sheet of steel, completely buried beneath the floor. Daniel spent nearly an hour trying to lift it. Eventually, one corner came loose. Underneath was darkness and a staircase. Daniel stared down. The stairs were made of concrete and disappeared into the ground. That made no sense. The house had no basement. At least, there wasn't supposed to be one. He grabbed a flashlight and went down. The staircase continued much farther than he expected. 10 steps, 20, 30, then 40. Finally, he reached a narrow corridor. At the end was a small wooden door. Daniel opened it. Inside was a room, a completely furnished room. There was a desk, a chair, a filing cabinet, and hundreds of photographs covering the walls. Daniel stepped closer. The photographs showed his house, but they weren't recent. Some were decades old. He picked up one photograph. It showed the house in winter. Another showed it during a storm. Another showed the front door. Then Daniel noticed something strange. Every photograph had been taken from inside the property, as if whoever took them had been watching the house. He opened the filing cabinet. Inside were folders. Each folder had a date: 1978, 1979, 1980, 1981, 1982. Daniel pulled one open. Inside was a photograph of the dining room. The same dining room he was standing in, but the photograph had been taken 20 years earlier. He looked at the floor. Then back at the photograph. The metal hatch wasn't visible. Instead, there was a man standing exactly where Daniel was standing now. Daniel froze. The man's face had been scratched away. He grabbed another photograph. Same room. Another person. Face scratched out. Another photograph. Another person. Always standing in the same location. Always with the face destroyed. Daniel suddenly noticed something written on the back of the newest photograph. Only 4 words. He will find this. Daniel dropped it. The photograph had been dated 3 days earlier. He had bought the house 11 days ago. Someone had been inside. Recently. Daniel ran upstairs. He locked every door, called the police. But when officers searched the basement, they found nothing. No photographs, no desk, no filing cabinet, no room. The staircase ended at a concrete wall. Daniel insisted he had seen it. The officers assumed he was mistaken. That night, Daniel barely slept. At 3:17 a.m., he heard something from underneath the floor. Clang. He sat upright. Again. Clang. The exact sound his hammer had made. Daniel slowly walked toward the dining room. The floorboards were moving. One board lifted slightly. Then another, and underneath was the metal hatch. But this time, it was already open. Daniel stood there, staring into the darkness. Then he saw something at the bottom of the stairs, a photograph. He walked down, picked it up. His hands started shaking. It was a photograph of Daniel standing inside the basement. The photograph had been taken from behind him, and on the back were 5 words. You were never the first. Daniel turned around. The corridor was empty. Then he heard a camera shutter. Click. The lights went out. Marcus found the recorder inside an abandoned office building. The building had been scheduled for demolition. He was helping remove old equipment when he discovered a small cassette recorder inside a locked desk. It was covered in dust. The batteries were dead. There was one cassette inside. Marcus took it home. He didn't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe because he collected old electronics. That evening, he replaced the batteries. The recorder worked. He pressed play. Static filled the room. Then a man's voice appeared. If you're hearing this, you're inside the building. Marcus frowned. He had never heard the voice before. The recording continued. You're standing beside a desk. Marcus looked around. He was sitting beside his own desk. He laughed nervously. Coincidence. Then the voice said, There's a blue mug to your right. Marcus looked at the mug. His smile disappeared. The voice continued. Don't turn around. Marcus froze. For several seconds, he didn't move. Then he slowly turned. Nothing. Just his apartment. He stopped the recording. He told himself it was some elaborate prank. The next morning, he returned to the abandoned building. He searched for the desk where he had found the recorder. Nothing unusual. Then he found another cassette. This one had a date written on it. Tomorrow's date. Marcus took it home. That night, he played it. Static. Then the same voice. At 8:12 tomorrow morning, you'll receive a phone call. Marcus checked the clock. 8:11 p.m. The voice continued. Don't answer it. The next morning, Marcus woke early. At exactly 8:12, his phone rang. Unknown number. He stared at it. The call stopped. Marcus felt his heart pounding. Then another recording started playing from the old cassette recorder. He hadn't touched it. The voice said, You answered. Marcus stepped backward. He hadn't. Then his phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed his own number. He didn't answer. The recording continued. Good. Marcus stared at the recorder. Now go back to the building. He didn't want to, but curiosity won. He returned to the abandoned office. The building was empty. He walked through the dark corridors until he reached the room where he'd found the recorder. There was another desk. On it sat a cassette. Marcus picked it up. His hands were shaking. Written across the label were 2 words. Final recording. He put it into the recorder. The voice began. But this time, it wasn't the unknown man. It was Marcus. His own voice. If you're hearing this, you're already too late. Marcus dropped the recorder. He listened again. His voice continued. I found the recordings too. Marcus backed away. The recording described everything he had done. Finding the first cassette. Hearing the phone call. Returning to the building. Even the exact room where he was standing. Then his recorded voice said, Whatever you do, don't look through the window. Marcus slowly turned toward the window. There was someone standing outside. A man. Motionless. Watching him. Marcus ran. He sprinted through the building and didn't stop until he reached the street. He never returned. 3 weeks later, the building was demolished. Workers discovered something beneath the foundation. A small underground room. Inside were dozens of cassette recorders and hundreds of tapes. Each tape had a name. Marcus found out about it from a newspaper article. Then he saw the photograph. The workers had photographed the room. In the corner was one final cassette. The label read, Marcus, Final Day. Ethan found the photograph inside an old wooden frame. He had bought the frame at a second-hand store. The picture inside looked ordinary. A group of people standing outside an old building. Nothing unusual. Until Ethan noticed the man in the background. He was standing behind everyone else. His face was turned toward the camera, but Ethan couldn't identify him. He showed the photograph to his father. His father stared at it, then said, I don't remember that man. Ethan looked closer. The stranger was wearing an old-fashioned black coat. Everyone else looked relaxed, but the stranger looked terrified, as if he knew something the others didn't. Ethan scanned the photograph, then searched online for the building. It was an abandoned hotel that had closed decades ago. He became obsessed. He searched for more photographs. Eventually, he found another. Same hotel, different year, different people. But the same man was standing in the background. Same coat, same face, same expression. Ethan searched again. Another photograph. Same man, another decade. Same man. He printed all the photographs and placed them on his bedroom wall. Then he noticed something impossible. The stranger wasn't always standing in the same place. He was moving closer to the camera. In the oldest photograph, he was barely visible. In the next, he was closer. Then closer. Then closer. Ethan found one photograph from 2018. The stranger was standing directly behind the photographer. Ethan's stomach dropped, because the photographer was looking into the camera, and Ethan recognized him. It was his father. Ethan confronted him. His father refused to talk. Finally, after several minutes, he said, "Put the photographs away." Ethan asked why. His father looked terrified. Then he said, "Because the last photograph hasn't happened yet." Ethan didn't understand. His father explained that years ago, he had entered the abandoned hotel with 3 friends. They found a room filled with photographs. Every photograph showed people who had entered the hotel, and every photograph showed the same stranger. Then his father found one photograph of himself. It showed him standing inside the hotel, but the photograph was dated 5 years in the future. His father left. He never went back. Ethan thought the story was ridiculous. Until the next morning, a new photograph was sitting on his bedroom floor. He hadn't printed it. He hadn't seen it before. His hands trembled as he picked it up. It showed the abandoned hotel. 4 people stood outside. 3 were strangers. The 4th was Ethan. He turned the photograph over. There was a date written on the back. Tomorrow. Ethan immediately called his father. No answer. He called again. Nothing. Then a message arrived. Just 6 words. "You were never supposed to see it." Ethan stared at the photograph. Something had changed. The stranger in the background was no longer far away. He was standing directly behind Ethan. Ethan slowly turned. Nobody was there. He looked back at the photograph. The stranger had moved closer again, and this time, his face was visible. It was Ethan's face. The photograph slipped from his hand. On the back, new writing was appearing. 1 letter at a time. Tomorrow is already happening. The lights in Ethan's room went out. His phone camera turned on by itself, and on the screen, Ethan saw the photograph, but the image wasn't still anymore. It was moving. The people in the photograph were turning toward him, and the man wearing the black coat was smiling. 3 discoveries, 3 secrets, and 3 people who found something that should have remained hidden. Maybe the most frightening mysteries aren't the ones we can't explain. Maybe they're the ones that don't want to be explained. Because sometimes, finding the truth isn't the dangerous part. Being noticed by the truth is. If you enjoyed these fictional horror mysteries, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which story would you never want to experience yourself.